My name is Morna Gerard, and I'm interviewing Jessica McQuain for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is March 2nd, 2019, and the interview is taking place at Georgia College in Milledgeville, Georgia. So let's start with what year you were born and where you were born.
I was born in March of 1994, and I was born in LaGrange, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes from where I actually grew up, but it was the closest place to be born at the time. So that's where I was born.
And can you describe your family's political leanings?
I can sum it up by saying that when we were studying political parties, the way I remembered which one my family was a part of was because the other one was the Democrats. So that was my way of remembering it, and I actually found a little book I wrote in 5th grade and said if I could vote for the president, who would I vote for? Because it was around the 2004 election, so it was Bush versus Kerry. And I wrote an entry about how I would definitely vote for Bush because Kerry wanted to do all these really cool things, but where would he get the money? Right out of our pockets, is what I said. And I said that he also did some kind of pointing thing that I didn't like, and I drew a little picture of him like pointing at someone, and I found it a couple weeks ago and was just laughing hysterically. But it was a very conservative environment. The town, the county itself, very conservative, and my family also. And I don't know that it ever occurred to them not to be, just as much as like that's what their parents were. So it didn't occur to me not. I thought, well, of course I'm a Republican. Republicans are the good guys. So I registered as a Republican when I turned 18. And I quickly found out I didn't agree that I was not a Republican. But I'm I think registered now as an independent.
So what made you sort of realize that you weren't a Republican?
Well, I came to college, came to a liberal arts college, and the first thing that made me realize I wasn't a Republican was social issues. And having known that I was bisexual in high school, once it became more of a hot button issue around 2012 or so, that was when I was really like, well, I mean, it's just ridiculous to say that the government can tell you who you can and can't marry, because if the government is supposed to be, you know, a limited power, then, and there's a separation of church and state, then why would a church ideal be governing the state? So that was my first kind of pondering of. And also, oddly enough, I got really into Spanish in high school and took 6 levels of it and completed the AP exam. And I was keeping up with some news on immigration, and that was kind of when I started really just considering the humanity of immigrants. And in my Spanish class, we would discuss the contradictory kind of impulse to be like, oh, we have to limit immigration. You know, immigrants are good for us, but that's who does a lot of agricultural work. And I came from an agricultural community, and though we didn't really have a large Hispanic working population, it was like something that to me was so side by side. You know, that's what we do. We have chicken houses, and you know, we work in the fields or whatever. So they're doing the same thing, and since they're not protected by their citizenship, they don't even get to get paid. Like, doesn't your heart ache for them? And then I started getting deeper into like racial history and understanding like the way that things have been stacked in my favor and in the favor of people who look like me. And so probably, gosh, by the time I was maybe 20, I was very much in complete rejection of Republican ideals. And when I was 20, it was 2014, so it was very much like Republicans seem to only want to talk about gay marriage and health care. And I was someone who was like, well, yes, I would like health care, thank you. That sounds wonderful. So that was, and then when I was 20, I was abroad in Spain, and I had to answer a lot of really uncomfortable questions. Someone asked me, why do Americans not want each other to have health care? Why don't you want each other to go to the doctor? And I said, the only answer I have is that Americans just don't like to be made to do anything, even if it's a good thing. You know, if you force an American to floss, they're gonna want to fight you about it because you're forcing them. And I mean, I really just I didn't have a lot of answers for why our country works the way it does. So I got kind of critical on that point.
Did your parents remain Republican?
Absolutely.
How has that played out? Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, my mom honestly just doesn't really engage. She never engaged with politics very strongly when I was a child anyway. It was just kind of, that's Republican, that's who we are, that's how we vote. We don't, we only think about it when it's voting time. So since then, she's just been kind of like, okay, think what you want. But her husband, she's remarried, and her husband is extremely Republican, and we've had a few kind of arguments. And then my dad, he's remained Republican, and he's very much on the pro-gun side of it. So he doesn't really, at least from what I know, he doesn't really get involved that much unless he's afraid that somebody might come after his gun. But it's a lot more difficult, honestly, to deal with my grandparents than my parents, because they just share the most ridiculous things on Facebook, the most ridiculously untrue, a simple Google search would have debunked this meme that you're sharing. No one's stabbing newborn babies. That's not happening. But I like to think that maybe they're a little less ignorant about LGBTQ issues because I exist. As far as immigration and gun control and abortion and those issues, I don't think my political leanings have affected them at all.
I was going to ask you about, your coming out. How, if you're okay to talk about that, how that went.
It was rather painless, which was very surprising. I expected kicking and screaming, and I wasn't particularly worried. I had been self-supporting for a while, so I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I had to work my way through that and pay for that. So I wasn't particularly worried, oh, what if they cut me off, or, don't speak to me again. I was that would be really difficult, but I could make it. So when I came out to them, I was just at the very beginning of a new relationship with someone who was my best friend. So they knew of this person, but my mom actually just guessed. She just knew because we came to visit on our way to the beach for a spring break trip, and it was actually the trip where we had our first kiss and where we really became a couple. So a couple weeks later, when I was visiting, my mom I said I wanted to talk to her, and she was like, "Are you in Charlotte dating?" And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, just so you know, if you ever dated a woman, it would be okay. We wouldn't disown you. We love you no matter what. And, I believe that God loves all his children. And I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not dating anybody. I'm single as a Pringle. And I don't know what you're saying. And then it was a couple weeks after that I said, okay, yes, we are dating. And she said, why? Kind of snarky. And I just said, well, because I like her. Why do you date anybody? because you like them. So after that, she pretty much just left it alone. She may have already had some idea, because when I was a few years younger, I had a friend who was actually kicked out by her family, and so I asked my mom if we had any like extra kitchen supplies, because she was trying to establish a household, and I said, you know, would you still love me if I were gay? And I had had boyfriend after boyfriend, so I thought she probably just thought it was hypothetical, but so I think she had somewhat of an idea. And then my dad, I called, because he lives in Indiana, and I called him and said, you know, I'm dating someone, and I just, I wanted to tell you that it's a woman. And he said, well, great, are you happy? And I said, yeah, you know, it's new, but I'm happy. And there was never really much more conversation. He just said, okay, as long as you're happy, that's all I want for you. And it was a bit more touchy with my grandparents, I think. Like, my grandfather on my father's side is a preacher, and his wife, my grandmother, is like the church pianist, and they've always been, and her father was a preacher, and, you know, it's a very Christian-focused family. And I said, do you think Grandma and Grandpa are gonna hate me? He said, I don't think so. That's not what it's about for them, you know, hating people. It's about loving people. So they've always said, we love you both, give Charlotte my love. And my mother's mother said, because I was telling her about it, I was like, well, we were friends, but, and she was like, but there was just more. And she just seemed to get that. So that was good, because she was like my second mother growing up. So I was very concerned that my momo wasn't going to like me anymore. And my mom's dad had a harder time with it, I guess. He kind of heard through the grapevine, and I was at his house for a gathering, and he said, so I heard about your situation. And I said, my situation? You mean my girlfriend? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, we all reckon with what we do when we meet our maker, because you know, he's on his third wife, you know, and he was an adulterer. So in my book, he had no room to judge me for my sins, and he just said, that's right, we do. But he and his wife didn't come to our wedding, so that was hurtful.
And was the reason, was it because
yeah, it was because they, I messaged my Nana, his wife, and said, I haven't gotten your RSVP. We're trying to get tables for the grandparents, you know, a seating arrangement. She said, I'm sorry, we won't be able to make it. And that was, you know, that was fine. But then immediately she sent another message that said, we just can't come support something that we don't believe in. And I was pretty hysterical. I called my sister, and I was crying, and I said, I just thought they believed in me. And I guess not. So my mom said that she had called her dad and, you know, had a fight with him, and that he didn't even know his wife had sent me that message, but that he, you know, confirmed that they would not be in attendance. And that was difficult, because I at one point had asked him to walk me down the aisle when my parents got divorced, and I had a bad relationship with my father, and he kind of joked like, well, who knows if I'll even be around at that day. And that day came, and I mean, we eloped, so there was nobody walking anybody down any aisles, but it was hurtful that he wasn't there. And I mean, he is like the farthest right you can get without being basically a homeland terrorist. So I haven't seen him in a while, and I just don't know that I will. I don't want to go visit someone who, like, my wife's not comfortable coming along, and I mean, have so many other relationships to foster, and you know, I don't know that I'll ever get an apology.
I'm glad then that so many of your other important family members were cool with it. That, you know.
I was very blessed in that because it is a conservative culture. I come from a very religious family, and Southern Baptist, particularly on my mother's side. And what was strange was that my wife's family was much more difficult to deal with, and they're not religious at all. But they just didn't get it. They were like, I just don't understand. And especially because she came out as bisexual at first. They were like, you can't be halfway. You can't, you know, her father's brother came out as gay, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And that was just a horrible, ripping the family apart kind of situation. And even though they have made peace, it was like, suddenly he was like the good gay because he knew he was gay 100%. He wasn't any of this bisexualness. So that was really difficult.
I think generally people who are bisexual get a really rough deal. It's like people assume wrongly, generally, that they just haven't made a decision yet.
Exactly.
Or that they're trying to figure, it's like...
Right, it's like a layover on your way to gay town. And yeah, it's something that I've come to kind of focus on, is like how our culture engages in bi erasure, which is just like erasing these bisexual identities and just assigning them into one of those neat categories. Like Freddie Mercury was bisexual, and he gets thrown as like gay icon, and people are ignoring that entire, you know, other part of his sexuality. So my wife now is like, I'm a lesbian. She's like, I was, you know, was very unsure, but she's like, I just am way more comfortable with that identity. And me personally, I'm not, because I did date and have a lot of boyfriends, and still experience a lot of what straight women experience and other bi women who date men. And so I just didn't think that a lesbian identity was like true for me. And it's very fluid, you know. Some people are like 80% attracted to one and only 20 the other, but I've always just thought it's so personal. Like, I'm attracted to a personality and not really a physicality. Like, someone can be physically gorgeous and then they open their mouth. It's just like so hideous on the inside that you just like, my eyes deceive me. So yeah, coming out was difficult, but what's really like annoying is like we are both very feminine presenting. There's a term for us, lipstick lesbians, and we're always coming out in little ways, and it's so annoying because it's like just once we were just in the airport after an exhausting trip to California, and we had missed our plane and finally come back and land in Atlanta, and we're, you know, getting on the little weird underground train, and a worker is like, "Are y'all sisters?" Which we get asked all the time. She's a redhead with a completely different face shape, and we're the same height, but that's about it. And I said, "No, we're not. Are you cousins?" You know, just this pushy, "No, we're together, we're a couple." And that's, oh, okay, you didn't look. And it's frustrating because you know, if one of us looked more stereotypically gay, we would just look like a gay couple. But for a long time, we both had really, really long hair, and we both tend to wear dresses, preference over pants, because pants are silly and pockets are terrible. So people just always want, "Are you roommates? Are you sisters? Are you cousins?" And then we say, "No, we're a couple." "Well, who cooks?" "Well, who wears the pants?" And I tend to say, "Well, we both wear dresses. No one wears pants." And then who cooks? I don't know, whoever's not tired. I mean, who cooks at your house? There are plenty of straight couples where the man cooks or nobody cooks and they order pizza or Chinese food. So that kind of like, I guess it could be microaggressions and in like sociological terms, that kind of thing. Like it just makes me tired, but it makes my wife really angry. She's like, why do you care? Do you just ask strangers what their relation to each other is all the time? It's like people, she says that she thinks that people know that we're a couple, they just want to hear us say it. And they're just nosy. So, yeah, that's kind of a...
And for the record, Charlotte was the friend that you
Yes,
started. She was your
Charlotte
first. She was your first girlfriend.
My first girlfriend, and my first wife, and hopefully only wife, and future first lady of the United States. So yeah, we kind of did the. There's also kind of a lesbian stereotype that like you shack up quickly and you bring your U-Haul on the first date. But we took our time and we were very nervous about our friendship. Like, we were best friends. We had the same double major, English and Spanish. We had the same circle of friends. So if it didn't work out, we would lose a lot. And it just kept working out. And so after about a year, we decided to live together. And then after about 6 months of living together, she proposed. So and then we were engaged for a year and a half. So we had a long dating relationship before we got married. But we've never dated any other women. So like we had a friend ask us for advice, like, how do I meet women? And we were like, call your best friend. I don't know. It's like, I don't know how to meet women, honestly. That's part of why I dated men for so long, because I just didn't know how to find women I was attracted to, or if I flirted with them, it just came off as like, I like your purse. So I didn't know how until we were in a bar downtown, and Charlotte had confessed to this guy she had a crush on that she had a crush on him, and he said, I have a girlfriend, and it's a rough situation, and I'm sorry. And she was telling me about it, and my drunken self thought it was the perfect time to cheer her up with the news that I was in love with her. So I said, well, I think you're pretty, and I like you, and I just like you're beautiful, and I love you. And she was shocked and said, I don't like girls. I don't like girls. And so I went home and cried. Then we got together like the next day, and she was like, what happened last night? Like, I have this memory that we were talking, but I don't really remember. And I was like, I don't want to talk about it, because I thought I would just get rejected again. And after about a month of really awkward kind of tension, we were going on that spring break trip, and it was so palpable, the sexual tension between us. And my birthday is March 10th, so that coincided right with our spring break. And after my birthday party, she spent the night, and we just like laid in bed across from each other, just like, yeah, we're friends, totally kind of unaware of how to, to be like, I want to hold your hand. So we were on spring break when she said, can I try something? And she kissed me, and then we decided to like wait and see if it was, if dating was going to work out before we started trying to come out to our families, because it was the first time either of us had dated a woman. And I knew that I was bisexual, but I just thought, well, what's the point in making a ruckus? If I've had boyfriends and like basically have been passing this whole time, then I don't really need to make a stir. And then when we were serious, I said, yeah, it's time, because even if I were to marry a man or, it didn't work out, that's still part of who I am.
Good for you. At what age do you think you realized that you were bisexual?
17. Okay. It's very strange because I can look back in my childhood and remember me like looking at these women and thinking like, wow, she's beautiful, but being very confused as to whether I wanted to look that way and be beautiful in that way, or I wanted to, kiss this woman. So I just like wrote it off, and then I read this Cosmo article, because Cosmopolitan is such a reliable source, but it was like, can you be straight if you watch gay porn? And I was like, good question, because porn with guys in it is super gross. I really don't like those. So the article's like, yeah, maybe you just, imagine your own body being touched in that way. And I was at a party, and in my 11th grade year of high school, and a girl, there was massive drinking. This is the night I also got alcohol poisoning, so that was just not great. But a girl at the party was like, we should kiss. Like, it'll be like a fun party trick, everyone will think it's so cool. And my very drunken self was like, why? Why should we? And she was just like, we should kiss, like it'll be fun, And I was like, okay. And so we like kissed, and I was just like, that was nice. Like that was really like, that was enjoyable. So I had a boyfriend, and he was, like, oh, you watch lesbian porn? Cool, hot, whatever. And it was just kind of this like, should I deal with this? Like, should I just ignore it? But I just felt like, I was like, this, I'm bisexual. Like this, if you would have sex with women, willingly, like you're probably attracted to women, and I would have sex with a woman. So I told that boyfriend, I think I'm bisexual, and he's like, hot, like a very little reaction besides like what could potentially be for his own viewing pleasure. And then when I got to college, I was dating another guy, and there was a girl down the hall from me in my dorm, and he also lived in my dorm, so we were all neighbors, and she was like out as like the experimental lesbian, and she was pursuing me, and I felt flattered and worried. But she was a cheerleader for the school, and I had been a cheerleader in high school, and we, were both like, we had things in common, and I was like, okay, like I'm interested. And she pitched, I guess, a threesome. Like she pitched that to us, and my boyfriend was like, yeah, sounds great, let's do that. And after that, I remember turning to him one night and being like, if we ever broke up, I think I'd date a woman. And so a couple of years later, we broke up, and about 6 months later, Charlotte and I started dating, and I told him, I was like, I didn't want you to hear it from somebody else, but I am dating someone. And he said, oh, cool, do I know him? And I said, well, yeah, you actually met her a couple weeks ago. He didn't seem too thrilled to have been, quote, replaced, by a woman, but it was, it wasn't, I didn't know at the time that we broke up that we were going to date. It was just like, it was the end of that relationship. And so the transition period, I was like, when I was single, I was still dating men, and I was like pining after my best friend, and it was odd, but worked out.
Well, I'm glad that you got like this. It really has worked out. I saw your wedding photographs, and you're absolutely beautiful. They're really beautiful day.
It was a stunning. I mean, the photos were stunning. It was a perfect lighting, and our dresses were perfect, and there were 25-mile-per-hour wind gusts that day, but you can't hardly tell in the photos, except at one point we both had to take our veils off because they kept flying out and flying down the beach. But it's been, on one hand, kind of like good to be each other's first girlfriend, because we both are like, you know, I don't know, I don't get that lesbian reference. Are we supposed to understand? Are we supposed to get that reference? And then on the other hand, it's like, my wife has said before, like, I wish I had known that I was a lesbian, because I wasted so much time. And she's remembered multiple times where she was having like a flirtatious encounter in a bar, and a girl wanted to bring her home, and she pushed back and said, no, I don't like girls. And now she's like, dang, I could have gone home with that one girl, she was so cute. And it's kind of a, like, what would that have really changed, you know? Maybe not much, but we both met, we were in freshman seminar together. When we got to college, we were journalism majors. And so we met when we were 18, and then weren't really friends for a few years. And then when we both got back from Spain, we befriended each other because we had both loved it so much, and we missed it, and we had switched our majors to English and Spanish. So we had a bunch of classes together, and I think we wouldn't have had the same relationship at 18 that we had at 21. So
I have a question. So it sounds like your family are like pretty fine with you being bisexual. From my conversation with you earlier, you sound like you're pretty feminist.
Yeah,
how are they with your feminism?
I mean, honestly, I don't think they can be surprised, because one of my earliest career goals was to be the first female president of the United States. And I had a friend in elementary school who, when I spent the night at her house on Saturday, I would go to church with her, and she went to the Methodist church, and I had always grown up going to the Baptist church. And the Methodist church had a female preacher. And I came home so excited. I said, Mama, like, I want to be a preacher. I want to be a pastor. And she said, you can't. The Baptist church doesn't allow that. It's wrong. Women can't teach men. And I was just so angry and heartbroken. Like, I thought people, were preachers because they were called by God, not because they had the right genitals. So I was, from a young age, like, very much woman power, girl power, and I mean, I feel just sometimes like the black sheep. Like, they listen to me and they're just like, okay, crazy. I'm waiting for them to call me a communist, because I'm sure that's coming any day now. But it's important to me, because after my parents divorced when I was 13, my mom was a single mom with 4 children, with 4 girl children. So being a strong woman wasn't an option, it was a necessity. You had to be strong, you had to work and make things happen. So we were given examples of strong women. So for me, like, feminism was just, well, of course, it's about strong women, so sign me up. And I had a very basic understanding of feminism, like, when I came to college. And as I've, like, studied it more, I'm very passionate about intersectionality, and about, realizing, like, it's not blind allegiance to any woman about anything. It's equality for everybody. It's equity. It's the chance for people to live their life as they see fit for them, without this pressure of, like, girls don't do that or boys don't do that. My mom, when I was in 5th grade, went back to college to become a nurse, and I think she had a male nurse in her class, and there's no, like, oh, men are just exempt. Like, they don't have to worry about gender issues. They do, because they were told, well, you're a nurse, wow, what a wuss, or you can't cry about that, or, any number of stereotypes. So for me, like, I'm just kind of at the point where I'm like, I don't care what my parents or whoever thinks about my feminism. It's my sisters. Like, they're all younger than I am, and they have not had the opportunity to move away from where we grew up and to go to college. And so if I can bring back, you know, some pieces, like, that's what's important to me, like being able to support them. And my sister, who's the youngest right below me, is 20, and she had a baby last year, and she's doing the very traditional, like, stay-at-home mom. Her fiance works, and she keeps the house and keeps the baby, and that's her prerogative, you know, and that's what she wants to do. And for her to have that choice, I think there's like a misunderstanding in some feminist circles that, like, oh, you're betraying your gender by doing that. But the best thing you can give a child is a stable home. So if that's the way she gives it to her, that's fine. And her house looks great. My house is a mess. Like, both of us are in school. We have 3 cats and 2 dogs. And I mean, she was like, I have a cleaning schedule, you know, I dust on Thursdays, and I was like, oh God, when was the last time I dusted? I don't even know, you know? So it's very much just about, you know, like, me letting her know that this is a valid choice, and this is a great choice, and you can be a strong woman from your house, you know, that's okay. And then my 2 younger sisters one just graduated high school, and then one is graduating high school next year. So I try to really, you know, like, portray to them, you can do, you know, what you want to do. Maybe it's not a 4-year degree. That's not for everybody. It's really expensive. So, you know, if you want to go to the technical school, that's great. You know, if you want to be a welder, awesome. You know, that's a lot more money than an English major is ever going to make. So, you know, go for it. So for me, it's really about the younger generation, and even my cousins who are, you know, in the same boat. Like, it's not typical in our family to move away from where we grew up, and I did. But if I can just, like, remind them, like, I don't hate where I came from, it's just not my choice. And if I can sprinkle a little feminist wisdom, you know, and just, like, sometimes I'm like, hey, let's talk about race, because school does a really bad job of it. So I catch myself, like, interjecting and being like, well, that's not right. That's, you know, an assumption that you have because you've never had any exposure whatsoever to anything different. And it's a really exhausting place to be between cultures, sort of, because I came to college at a college where the majority of students had parents who had been to college and had parents supporting them through college, and so I felt like I didn't belong, being low income and being a rural student in a school where the majority are suburban. And I didn't belong at home anymore either. You know, they said, why do you have to move out there? And then when I was spending a semester in Spain, I was, you know, saving up for it, waiting tables, like, pinching pennies, and they were like, why? Why do you gotta go over there? Why can't you just study Spanish here? You know, why do you gotta go read books in Milledgeville? Why can't you just read books here?
Because I'm meant to meet my future wife.
Yeah, you have to meet Charlotte in Milledgeville.
You've done really well then to sort of bridge all of that, and that is tiring.
It is. It's tiring, and it's something that it affects my research interests as well. I'm very interested in people living between cultures, particularly like the bisexual experience, the queer experience, being not quite either or. And what fascinated me about that experience probably first was the experience of immigrants and of children of immigrants and of people who are maybe moved here as a child or born here, and they're stuck between these cultures, the culture of their parents and the culture of their current society. And like that really captured my focus in my Spanish studies, and then the queer experience, and then by extension of that, the first generation experience, and then that's opened up an interest in the biracial experience, or any kind of non-classifiable existence, because we have so many more non-classifiable people than what we like to acknowledge. So it's been a trying journey. I mean, I've definitely said the most cringy things, especially after first leaving high school and having very little exposure to like feminist thought or social justice work at all. It took a lot of unlearning and a lot of like conscious recognizing bias in movies, in books, in education. I mean, my 8th grade class watched Gone with the Wind. It's part of our Georgia history section. It's fiction. It is a work of fiction, and how that was even okay is beyond me. But I had help.
I applaud you. I really do applaud you. It's like that's a lot to have done, and it's something that you had to work at, but you chose to sort of take it on, and so yay. And like, let's talk about difficult journeys. Let's start with the election night of 2016.
So I actually had a feeling that it was going to go the way it did. I had read an article by a political science professor, maybe, who had accurately predicted like the last dozen elections. And his take on it was that Trump would win. That the backlash of 8 years of such progressive policy and a black president was going to necessitate a backlash from the kind of white supremacist people who I think were just they were just sleeping. They were comfortable. Nobody was threatening the status quo. I mean, the biggest thing that was, a threat was 9/11, terrorism, Muslims. And then Obama was elected, and I didn't have a problem. I mean, I was in the 8th grade, so I couldn't vote, but I was like, okay, well, he seems qualified, and people lost their minds. I mean, it was like these people just woke up and they were like, what? A black man? Everything I know is being undone. And so in 2016, I hoped, for the sake of the country, I wasn't even a very big Hillary fan. What I said, my take on the election was no matter who wins, all it proves is that to be the president, you just need money. You don't need morals. You don't need experience. You don't need the majority of the country to even vote for you. You just need money. And when we woke up that next morning, because we didn't stay up and wait for the results, we woke up and Charlotte said, he won. And I just started crying. It just proved to me that even then, even 2016, an underqualified man could be a qualified woman. Because if you just look at because I graduated in December of 2016, so I was very much on the job search kind of mentality and making my resume, the best it could be. And I was like, what is his resume? He's had all these failed business ventures and lawsuits and ethical complaints, and her resume is okay, politics, Secretary of State, relevant job experience, whether you agree with her political leanings or her opinions, she had the job experience, and that's what I freaking thought was important when you applied for a job, was that you were experienced and that you were qualified. And I was just this is such a punch in the gut to women everywhere who've ever lost the job to a man who was underqualified just because, like, what, he had a bigger mouth or more money, or he knew Chad over in HR. I was devastated as a woman in the workforce that I could do everything I was supposed to do and get to that level and still lose just because some douchebag had a bunch of other douchebags riled up. I mean, I was devastated in that regard. And I was like a little bit kind of like, maybe it's because I'm going to be the first woman president. And that's why Hillary can't be the first woman president, because it's going to be me. But when I started, first of all, the atmosphere on the college campus the next day was just like everybody had been slapped. I mean, we were all just like zombies. And it's a liberal arts college. It does tend to be pretty liberal, but we were all exhausted. Everybody was emotionally exhausted. Professors, students. I mean, I had a class that next morning at 10, and we just kind of sat there like, is this really the reality now? This is going to be our president? Like, kind of embarrassing. And some kid was like, well, I didn't vote. And I mean, people just, they were going to rip his head off. He was like, I don't care. He literally said that it didn't matter to him. It didn't affect him. And he was a white guy. So I was like, edge of my seat. I was like, you don't have anybody in your life who's a woman or a queer person or a person of color who's going to be affected? Like, you don't know anybody who could be affected? That doesn't motivate you? People you love? And he was just like... So, brilliant peers. But I was so sad that I wasn't surprised, because maybe it would have been easier if I was really genuinely shocked, like, how could this have happened? But I was like, of course this is what happened. A strong woman, you know, trying to lead the country. I mean, it doesn't help that she had all this, like, all I heard was like Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi. And I was like, what is Benghazi? What are you talking about? And, you know, I had to look it up because it was before my time, and it was just like, she made a mistake. You never made a mistake on the job? You know, maybe your job wasn't so important that, you know, people's lives were at stake, but and then there was all kind of weird conspiracies about the Clintons, and I was just really confused. I was like, I don't know where you're getting that from, but I hadn't really been much involved in politics until that happened.
So, when did you decide that you wanted to go march?
It was rather late. Like, it was probably early January when I was like, what really baffled me so much was, like, after the election, my Facebook feed changed. It was like people I thought were rational people became these MAGA robots. And I just was, I mean, it was a very similar reaction that I had after gay marriage was legalized. And I got on Facebook and I had friends sharing things that were horrible. And it was like I didn't even know that was lurking beneath the surface until this outside event, you know, triggered them to, like, speak up about it. And I was so tired. I mean, because after the election, it was like people kept coming up forward with these things. Well, Trump did this really horrible thing too. Like, look at this video and, like, listen to what he said. And there was so much negativity around, like, women and so much divisiveness that when I found out about the march, I thought, yeah, women deserve a march, because we've been forced to listen to this, like, ridiculous rhetoric and these, you know, grab them by the pussy repeats. Like, I don't need to watch that video again. You think I haven't heard that kind of shit? in, you know, any high school, college. I've been to frat parties. I know what, you know, the horrible things that get said under the guise of just joking and bro talk. I mean, so I said, yeah, women's march, like, sign me up, you know? I am here for women. Like, women deserve something, because I thought that the election was like just a loss for women everywhere, regardless of their political affiliation. Like, any woman who's ever applied for a job should be really upset. And I said, Charlotte, do you like want to go to this march? And she was a lot more shocked than I was. I think she just expected that, like, logical, you know, things would happen. And she said, yeah, let's do it. Let's go to this march. So it's really bad weather.
Did you make a conscious decision to go to the Atlanta one rather than the DC one?
Yes, for money reasons. We were like, well, we can't afford to drive to Atlanta for the day because we don't have to get a hotel or anything. And I pretty much knew off the bat. I was like, yeah, I would love to march in DC, but I don't have money for a hotel. That's a much larger trip, and we have animals we have to arrange care for. So that's always, like, you know, the sticking point is who's going to watch our dogs and cats and our tarantula and our fish. I don't want to leave them out. So when we found out about the Atlanta march, we were like, yeah, we could do that. And we had a friend who wanted to go too, so she rode with us. And it was actually really frustrating because they were tearing down the power plant that day. It was a Saturday. The power plant up on Lake Sinclair that used to have a really tall stack that was kind of a landmark of, like, oh, you're almost in Milledgeville, there's the stack. They were knocking the stack down that day, so the highway was closed. I mean, that's how you get to Atlanta. You know, you go up 441 to Madison and get on I-20. So we had to go some godforsaken back way in the rain to Atlanta. And by the time we got to the MARTA station, I was just like, I hope this is worth it, because I'm exhausted and we haven't even marched anywhere. And our signs were, like, made with, you know, with Crayola markers. We didn't have them laminated or protected, so we kind of, like, put, like, clear trash bags around them, and we're trying to keep them from getting wet. And it was quite a trip up there.
So, because it was raining very heavily that morning,
Mm-hmm.
that must have been difficult. But which MARTA station did you park your car?
Oh, it was just the one that they told us to park at. So I think it was maybe a civic center.
Okay.
Or maybe that's where we got off. I didn't grow up in Atlanta or, you know, going to Atlanta a lot. So it was actually my first time on MARTA was for the Women's March. I was very excited. I was like, oh, you get a little card, and cool, I feel like a New York City gal. And I think we parked at, maybe it was a Civic Center one. It was one that was more on the west side of the city, I think, closer to Milledgeville.
How many people did you think were going to be at the march?
I think that Facebook was expecting like 10,000, and so I thought, okay, yeah, maybe 10,000 people. That sounds like a sizable amount, and it's raining, so some people stayed home. But when we came out, it was like, whoa, we better hold hands. Like, we're gonna get lost. So we stayed together, and we had other friends who were living in or around Atlanta who were going, and we were gonna meet up with them, and we couldn't find them. And Representative John Lewis was speaking before the march, and we were trying to go see him speak, but there were so many people, and it had been raining so hard that, like, the little park area where he was speaking, it was just a mud hole. I mean, it was pretty yucky. So we couldn't reach our friends because they were on the other side of the mud hole, and then it was kind of, you know, are we moving? Are we not moving? And we were just kind of clinging to each other, like, this is a big crowd, and neither one of us are very big fans of big crowds. And I'm not very knowledgeable about Atlanta. She grew up like 30 minutes north of Atlanta, so she went to Atlanta a lot for concerts and things with friends and field trips. So she's a little more comfortable, but we were just like, okay, can we please walk now? Because we've been standing here and we don't know what to do, and our signs are getting, wet, and it felt better once we started moving, because it felt just like this mass of people crushing in on each other. And once we started moving and actually marching, that was when I could see how many people there were. Like, there's this one part of 85 maybe, where it kind of circles around, and we were walking around that circle, and I was like, oh, look, just this line of the whole, interstate wide of people just walking with signs. I mean, it was like a Skittles parade. There was so many colored signs, and there wasn't really a lot of like pussy hats. I kind of just missed that memo entirely. I was like, were we supposed to have hats? I don't think that's, I don't knit, so it was amazing how many people there were. And then we got the final count was like 63,000. And I mean, gosh, if it hadn't rained, how many more people would have been there? But it was good to feel like, oh, other people are totally horrified. So
yeah, I mean, it's what was the mood like when you're in amongst all of these people?
Honestly, it was a bit mixed, and there was one point, like there was pockets of like very cheerful people who were just like there to show love, like we're here for women, we love women. And then there were very like loud and angry anti-Trump pockets, and that wasn't why I was there. Yes, I don't agree with him, don't agree with his policies, I don't think he's fit for the job, but I was there for women. And to make it about a man, to me, felt like we were just
hijacking our stuff
right,
again.
Exactly. And here we are on the Women's March, and everyone's chanting and talking about some guy. So we ended up in a pocket that was chanting, he's orange, he's gross, he lost the popular vote. And we just kind of looked at each other, we were like, we should walk forward. Like, we were in such desperate need of positive energy that the pockets of people saying, we're here, we're queer, we're not going anywhere. We were like, yeah, let's go over there. We're there chanting that, And I mean, from our signs, we were...
Tell me what were on your signs.
So my sign said, I march for poor women, I march for single moms, I march for survivors, I march for immigrants. And then at the bottom it had like it said women, and then it had like black, brown, queer, Latinx, disabled. Like I had all these modifiers around it to just kind of show that like woman is an identity, but like there's so many facets of that. And then on the very bottom it said, still I rise, a quote from Maya Angelou, who's one of my favorite poets. And Charlotte's sign was rather simple. She just wrote, I march for women battling depression, because it's something that she's dealt with, it's something that I've dealt with, it's something that we felt keenly aware of in the election cycle, because we had so very recently like come out, and we were trying to just figure out where we belong in the world as seniors in college, what are we meant to do, and to have so much discussion around whether it is or isn't okay to rape women, or whether gay people should even be allowed to exist. That kind of rhetoric, and feeling like the division in our families and the kind of negative energy. Like we really wanted to go to the Women's March to be with women, to be empowered, and to feel like, okay, this is what these politicians have said about women, and this is what the reality is, that we're strong and we're supporting each other. And so the energy was at times too anti-Trump, if that's possible, but it just felt like we forgot why we were there. And I think a lot of women were really angry very rightfully so. And I just, I've encountered so many ways that women suffer. It felt like to me that anger being directed at Trump was so useless. He's never been hungry. He's never, his daughter has never not had money for pads or tampons. He's not ever experienced crushing student loans. So being angry at him, chanting, he's orange, he's gross, he lost the popular vote, those things are all true. But we know, let's chant like, still I rise. Let's chant positive things, or even just like, we will overcome, something a little bit more inspiring.
Did you have a favorite chant?
Honestly, I don't really even remember. I was chanting something at one point, I don't even remember what it was, which is a little embarrassing, but I just really distinctly remember he's orange, he's gross, he lost the popular vote. And I was like, he is not the reason we're here, it's about us, how badass we are.
Were you glad you were able to go with Charlotte?
I was. I was glad because Charlotte's not very politically active. She's one of those people who feels like she's not educated about it enough to have an opinion. And she's not someone who likes conflict very much at all. So she was like, what if there's counter-protesters? She was worried. She was like, what if there's a shooting? What if somebody brings a gun? Because that, it's our reality. I was glad we got to go together because I want us to be a team, in everything that we can be a team in. And being a team as far as like standing up for women was important to me. And it was important to her too. And I think she was a little intimidated. She was like, this is a lot of people. But she also, I think, felt empowered, and people kept coming up to her for her sign that said, I marched for women battling depression, and they kept coming up to her and saying thank you, and that means a lot to me, and your sign is the best sign I've seen all day because it's so real, and it's something that, a lot of women, had to face memories of that, grab them by the pussy talk being directed at them, or, of actually being assaulted. And, at the time, I feel like since the election, sexual assault cases have gotten a lot more airtime on TV. They've become more newsworthy in some way. And that's hard as a survivor. It's hard to keep, for me, it's hard to read articles where the victim is just reduced to the victim, and what about all the other things that she was, and then the rapist gets this identity, this, oh golly, he was a swimmer, and he was a good guy, and well, what about her? Wasn't she a good person? Wasn't she a sister or a friend or a student or a clarinet player or something? Anything, but obviously the need to protect someone's privacy is much larger than just representing equal representation of both parties. But it was like triggering. I was like, I can't watch the news. I can't keep up with this.
When you were speaking of worried about should be being shot or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
2 questions. Did you see counter-protesters when you were marching?
I don't remember seeing any that day. And I get a little bit mixed up because I marched in the Atlanta Pride Parade 4 months before the Women's March. So sometimes I'm like, was that at the Women's March or was that at Pride? But I don't remember seeing counter-protesters at the Women's March.
What about police officers? Did you see any of them?
Mhm. We did, yeah, I saw a good bit, and they were mostly just seemed to be kind of like, okay, you know, people look fine. Now, had we been an overwhelmingly black crowd, I don't know that that would have been the same treatment. But you know, it's the city of Atlanta. They have a lot of black police officers, and so I made sure to thank people who I saw. You know, thank you for giving us some security today. And it didn't particularly feel as if they were on our side, but it didn't particularly feel as if they weren't on our side. They seemed to just be like, is this going to stay like a chill thing, or is, you know, is somebody going to act up? I did remember seeing counter-protesters at Pride, but Pride in Atlanta has the angels that come with their big angel wings to block the protesters.
It's kind of wonderful.
That made me cry. I just thought how like beautiful for you to take your faith and like use it in a good way when people are just constantly trying to use it in order to draw lines in the sand and say, you can't sit with us, you know.
It's like using love.
Right.
It's like, it really is kind of pure love when you do that.
It is, and like that's what Jesus was all about.
Yeah.
Jesus never said, you know, don't sit with the Palestinians, they're gross. He said like, let me wash your feet, come on in. Do you want something to drink? I mean, I just don't know how that's not like on par with Southern hospitality. You know, if you want to tout your Southernness as a good thing, then like you have to embrace all the goodness of it. So I just
So speaking of like emotional, did you get emotional during the march?
I did. I got emotional at one point. We finally found our friends at the end of the march, at the kind of gathering place, and I was like, wow, like we just walked. I think my phone told me, you know, how many steps or whatever, and I said, we just walked all that way in like the middle of Atlanta. You know, we shut a city down, and I got emotional at the love that I felt when we finally found our friends and we were all hugging, and I was like, oh my God, let me see your sign, and you know, let me see yours, and that kind of positive support and that kind of like victorious atmosphere. Because after we escaped our like anti-Trump pocket, it felt very much like we're collectively here because we want, you know, half the population to feel as if they're welcome in this world. So I did get emotional at that point, just feeling like I had accomplished something. Like I actually marched in a march, and I grew up just reading, you know, oh yeah, civil rights people marched, and like I kind of just thought like nobody marched anymore because, well, civil rights happened and it must be all good, right? Very ignorant of me to think that, but I did. I felt proud, and I felt like it was a beautiful day, even though it was really gray and like cloudy and kind of gross. I was like, yeah, I did a march.
Now, when you looked around yourself at the crowd, who were you seeing? What in terms of race and gender and age and all of that kind of stuff?
I saw a lot of young people. I do remember seeing a good bit of young people who I assumed were probably students. I remember seeing mothers with children. I did cry at like this very little girl who was marching, and she was just so cute, and I was like, I hope you're empowered forever. I saw older women marching. I saw a lot of people who looked perhaps mixed race, or let's see, there were people who looked Latina, people who looked Black. There were a lot of white women. It seemed to be a majority, maybe a very slim majority of white women, but I felt like John Lewis speaking, and the 5th District being like really having representation was a draw for people of color. It was, I mean, I don't know how it started in Atlanta. Like, if the people who started the DC March also had a hand in organizing the Atlanta March. But since then, I've been, well, the Women's March has gotten a lot of criticism, and it's gotten criticism for a lack of inclusivity and for being like very much like a white woman's march. And I saw like a meme that really struck a chord with me after the march. It was like, okay, so are all you nice white ladies going to come to the next Black Lives Matter march? And I was like, wow, am I? Is this white feminism with a cute hat? And I was really conflicted. Like, I did have a good experience that day. I did feel empowered, but it does, beg the question, like, who wasn't feeling empowered? Was everybody feeling empowered? I don't know. I hope so. Andre 3000 came out and spoke, and I was like, who doesn't love Outkast? I mean, that's, that can be something we can all agree on. But I remember thinking, like, that I was happy to see so many kids. And it could have been just like a purely logistical thing that their moms had to bring them because it was a Saturday and they weren't in school. But that part was comforting. And there were men. There were men who, had signs like, I march for my daughter, or I march because I'm not a total jerk, or things like that. And that was good to see as well.
You said just a second ago, you mentioned like a cute hat. What did you think of the pussy hats? The whole idea of that?
I just was confused, like, why is that a part of the march? I didn't really understand where it came from, and I thought it was frustrating that it got turned into this like laughable thing, it was like the Women's March was reduced to a bunch of women wearing pink hats, when that wasn't what it was. And I was shocked when I got home. We drove back to Milledgeville and got on Facebook, and I just like had all these friends who were like so angry about the Women's March. And I was shocked. I said, why are you angry that other people were outside and they're, walking? Who cares? And I had friends who were like, this is just because they want abortion. It's like, well, I don't want an abortion. I'm dating a woman. That's not relevant to me right now. This is like, and I posted a really long post on Facebook, and I was like, listen, I'm marching because there are women out there who work 3 jobs and never get to see their kids. There are women out there who can't afford menstrual products. There are women who are living in violence because they have no resources to get out. Like, I just made a really, really long list of like my personal reasons that I marched, and I was like, I just wanted to clarify for some of you because you seem to really misunderstand why people are doing this. And
did you get responses to that?
I got some. I did get some people who were like, wow, I didn't know that. Thank you. Some people who said, well, that's a really good reason, but those other women are just crazy. The hats are tacky. And I was like, why do you care what they have on their heads anyway? I mean, our founding fathers wore frickin' powdered wigs, and they looked ridiculous. And I mean, no one's ever said, maybe the Constitution's not legitimate because they had silly wigs on their heads. So I think it's unfortunate, but not surprising that it got reduced to like a clothing item, because what did people talk about Hillary Clinton forever? Her pantsuits. Like, women and the clothes they put on their bodies should not matter, but somehow they do.
So, did you have any friends who you fell out with over all of this?
No, not that I know of. There were people on my Facebook that I like unfriended, but they were people I didn't talk to anyway. They were people who maybe I knew from high school or met one time or something, and I just thought, you know what, you're not going to listen to me, and I'm not going to waste my energy being upset with these terrible things that you're saying. So, bye. You know, and I did at one point, I was like very adamant about like, if I saw something that was shared on Facebook that was, you know, wrong or that I really disagreed with, I would try to engage a conversation and present my, you know, my side. And some people just, they don't care. They do not care. They only hear their ideas coming back at them. You know, any justification or reasoning that I had was very much just warped to fit their own concept. And honestly, I mean, the friends that I had who just genuinely misunderstood were the people that we remained friends, because I said, you know, this is why I marched, and they were like, wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But Fox News or, you know, whatever algorithm Facebook has for them just showed them women are marching because they hate men and want abortions. And so for me to just say, wow, that wasn't what I heard at the march. Nobody was chanting, we want free abortions now. That was like, it was eye-opening to them. They were like, oh, well, here's a totally, you know, rational person that I know, and they marched, so maybe not everybody was a total wackadoo. And I don't think I lost any friends.
Okay.
So.
I know some people who did.
Right.
It all depends on the friends that you have starting out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think, because you talked about Fox News, what did you think generally about the way the media covered the marches?
So I've been living without cable television for a very long time. So sometimes I'm just like blissfully unaware of what the news is saying, because I also don't watch it online. I am not a fan of broadcast news the way that we have it, because not everything is breaking news. The Women's March wasn't breaking news. Nobody died. Nobody was born. I mean, you know, it was a march that happened, and no laws were immediately changed. But it was like, breaking news. Women flood the streets. They're wearing funny hats. Should we all talk about this for weeks on end? And it was, I mean, my opinion is basically that, like, it got unfair coverage. Like, very few of the legitimate issues that people were really marching about were covered. And, I mean, the majority of the stuff was pretty boring. You know, it was like, we're standing in one place waiting for the line to move, and we're walking, you know. So it's like the media didn't have enough like flashy stuff to show, and they showed the, I don't know, the most, you know, sellable of it, which was I guess the pussy hats. And I'm much more of like an oral history, kind of direct from the horse's mouth kind of person. I don't really like the news. And that probably sounds so like Trump friendly, but I wanted to be a journalist when I came to college because I wanted to tell the truth. And I didn't feel that was what journalism did. I felt like it was telling people what they wanted to hear and just getting ratings and getting the most shares on your article and the most likes on your Facebook page. And I turned to creative writing. I turned to poetry. And I mean, just the constant in-your-face like news cycle, I don't think it does anybody any good. People get caught up in it and get like anxious and catastrophizing, like, oh, everything is horrible and it's all gonna be bad and everything's just falling apart and all around us. And that's perhaps the same amount of horrible as there's always been. but we didn't have access to it on Channel 4 all day every day. So I always read the news. I never watch it. Or I'll listen to. I love listening to NPR because they do a pretty good job of just presenting, like, this is what happened, and not putting a lot of commentary on it, because I feel like after the years I have studied English and literature and writing and language, I can read what happened and deduce my own commentary. And I think what we've really messed up on is, like, people don't want to do that. They want the recap, and they want their, the overall, what does this mean? They just want that handed to them. And so, if Fox News tells you that the overall meaning of the Women's March was that women hate men and want abortion on demand, okay, sure, yeah, I'll take that. It means I don't have to read over the entire, web page of the Women's March, and I don't have to go listen to the oral history of every woman who's ever done the Women's March. Like, it's more of an instant gratification to just say, well, this host on Fox News just told me in less than 5 minutes what it was all about, and so now I know and I'm good. And that was why it was important to me to, like, make a statement on Facebook, even though I'm not typically that kind of person, to just say, like, I don't think you're getting the correct information, because no one at that march was talking about abortion that I heard. I mean, it's a part of the reproductive rights that we would like to have, considering you can't force someone to take blood to save a life. Why should you be able to force someone to host, another creature to save a life? Because you're not ensuring any quality of life. It's pro-birth, not pro-life. So that's a part of the Women's March, but that's not like the thesis statement of the of the Women's March.
Let's talk about the world since the march. Did you join any groups, or did you did you attend any other marches afterwards?
I did not attend any marches after that. When we moved to Brunswick in the summer of 2017, I sought out an organization, and it was founded, I think, very much concurrently with the Women's March, and it's called Women's Voices of Glenn County. And it was it's a good organization, and they had their causes that they worked on for local issues, and then they supported larger causes as well. So I joined Women's Voices of Glenn County, and after we moved back to Milledgeville, I have not joined any particular groups. I know that there's like a Democratic alliance or something of that nature, but I just really struggle to call myself a Democrat. I don't think that it's right that we have this system where you have to choose either or. I don't think any either or system is correct. And I don't always agree with what Democrats propose. So it's hard to feel like I have any right to join a Democratic women's group when I am like, well, I'm not a Democrat. I tend to vote that way because that's the more aligned with my beliefs, but no, I have not. I just read a lot more, and I get emails from the White House every day, and I keep up with everything that he says. Not he, his administration says, also his campaign website. I get their email updates as well, and it's terrifying, the things that
Give me an example.
Like the recent case in New York about women being able to terminate pregnancies up until their trimester. The email that was sent to his fundraising group was like, Democrats have really lost it. they want to kill newborn babies. And it was incendiary and incorrect, and I thought it was just immoral to try to like get these people really pissed off. I mean, people have shot up abortion clinics. People, have been encouraged to this kind of violence, and I will say that the official White House emails are a lot tamer than the Trump campaign emails, because the White House ones at least have to like link to sources. The Trump campaign ones, they'll say anything, and they just really, really misconstrue the Democrats' goals and objectives, because I get also the Democratic email updates and say like, this is Cory Booker, and we're working on this proposal, and we'd like your name on this petition. And then I get the Trump email, Democrats want to take your every last dollar. It's just this like absurd stuff that's like, I don't really trust that the people reading it because they are donating are actually reading it critically and thinking, I wonder where that source is. Like, what Democrat is saying that? And it's, the nicknames, the horrible, like, nicknames that he sends in those emails. I wish I brought my phone in here so I could look at some of them, but it pushes me in my work to, like, have those small conversations and to really, reach out to people, because I'm pretty sure my entire family is Trump supporting. I mean, if they didn't vote for Trump, it's only because they didn't vote at all. And I don't know sometimes, like, should I even bother? Should I even go to this, family event that is gonna be a little cringy? And they're my family. I try to go to everything I can. Baby showers and, parties and Easter, and it's difficult, but it's like, I probably would be right there with them if I hadn't come to college. I can't say I wouldn't have, because I just don't know. I don't know that I would have realized the, white supremacist patriarchy that we're all living in and being, subjected to from the moment we're born. I don't know that I would have ever picked up on it if I hadn't gotten out of it. And I just hope that before it's too late, people can understand, like, all these human problems that we're having. The earth feels those. The earth is dying, and we are responsible. And I think if you have a strong Christian faith, you should be worried about that. And I just try to, like, connect where we can, and there are some members that I know, like, we can't have that conversation, and then there are some family members that I know that we can, and we may never agree at the end, but we can have it. We can talk about it and not totally hate each other. So,
Did you tell all of your family that you went to the march?
No, I didn't. I'm rather private. Like, I don't really tell them, like, oh, I'm doing this thing, and but I didn't, like, hide it from them. I didn't post any pictures, but my friends were posting pictures of us from that day, and I was tagged so people could see, that I had gone to the march. It was publicly on my Facebook page, and they didn't really say anything about it. It was just kind of I don't know when the next time I would have visited would have been. Probably was Easter, so a couple of months later, but they just kind of housework. I just don't go there.
So we're more than 2 years into this administration. Has anything surprised you about the way things are turning out? Has anything made you concerned? Is there anything you fear?
Yeah, I fear our foreign policy, like our foreign relations, international relations, because after studying Spanish and studying abroad, I had a really strong interest in foreign relations and in that kind of diplomatic work. And I don't know how any diplomat can go to another country and explain what is going on in our country. And I mean, I've been scared at some points about healthcare because of the birth control side of it. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I have been on birth control for years, and I need birth control to keep my hair in my head and to keep my skin from having really bad cystic acne all along the jawline, and to avoid growing hair in places where I don't typically like it to be. And it also affects my mood and my weight. So when the Affordable Care Act went through, it made it to where I had a $0 copay for my birth control, and that was a really big deal for me because I've been using the NuvaRing for a long time, and I really liked it. And I'm very forgetful, and I don't do well with the pill. And I didn't want like a bar in my arm or like a patch or a shot. And the NuvaRing works, and my doctor and I, have agreed on it, and so that's what I wanted to use. And I've been worried that like repealing that part of the healthcare could financially devastate me. I can't not have birth control, and I can't, I mean, I could switch, I guess, but I shouldn't have to. It's a medical decision between me and my doctor, and I don't think any man in a comfy office has any right to decide how much I should pay or whether or not it's, justifiable enough for me to have birth control. If I were still dating men, I'd be freaking terrified because I thought I was going to have an abortion once. I was raped, and I didn't get my period, and he didn't wear a condom. So I thought I was pregnant, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to have to go to Atlanta. There's no abortion clinics in Milledgeville, or, I'm going to have to go to Atlanta, and I'm going to have to take time off work, and how am I going to pay for this? And it was terrifying. And I went to the gynecologist, and they said, you're not pregnant, your body is just in shock, and your period's not, coming. But that's so personal, and that's no lawmaker's business to deal with. And I mean, the movement right now, the trajectory is, forced birth nation, or at least in Georgia, like the governor is all about it. So yeah, there have been times when I've been scared. There have been times when I've been scared that, that just being a woman and being, either in a queer space or like a very liberal space could make me a target for some psycho shooter, That's at times feels silly, like, I should feel safe. I'm just in the library or, whatever. But I've even heard people say, like, we should just take them out, and we don't have to worry about it. And it is scary, but I've been so inspired by the local engagement, the people who are saying, well, I'm going to run for city council, or I'm going to run for mayor, or even state level things, like that kind of motion of people, getting kind of like, this is unacceptable, I may not have all the answers, but I'm better than this, crazy fellow who thinks that women shouldn't be allowed in public or whatever. And I've been a little bit more like, okay, I need to pay attention. This is relevant to me. In my teens and early 20s, I felt kind of like, I'll vote when like it's time. But now I'm very much like, oh, what are they proposing? What are they thinking about? What court cases are going on right now? Because it is kind of a scary, like, wait, what? How many times has the Georgia, House proposed a bill to make it okay for people to tell me and my wife, like, we can't be in their store, or we can't rent from their, apartment building or whatever. It's scary, but it's also, I think, for as many people as were kind of sleeping and comfortable in their privilege in the 2008 election, the 2016 election has seen a lot of people who were kind of also sleeping and maybe comfy in their like assumed privilege that have woken up and been like, wow, I need to vote in the primaries. I need to go to the city hall and see what they're working on. And I'm kind of at the point currently where I'm like, I can't even worry about the federal stuff because it's such a clusterfuck and it's slow moving. Like, I'm worried about this right now. What's going on where I live? Who is being exploited to, pick those tomatoes that I'm making salsa with? Or, who is actually like in our community who's hurting? Like, where can that work be done? Because the anxiety is overwhelming when you look at this like really, really, really rich administration of people who probably can't relate with me on student debt or, how expensive the dentist is. I mean, they don't care. And anybody who thinks that they do is delusional. I mean, you cannot expect that this president has any sympathy for anybody living in poverty. And that's a lot of our country. That's a lot of people. So I've been scared, but I've also been determined a lot.
What are your hopes? What do you hope will happen moving forward?
So I hope that young people will get their butts to the polls, because millennials, we've got the numbers to outvote some of the older groups, and we've just got to show up. We've got to take it personally, and that's what it took for me, was taking it personally, taking it as like, you're saying what about gay people? You're saying what about women? That's not true. Taking it personally, that's important, and I hope that we'll continue to see women getting elected, people of color getting elected, and really breaking down that kind of just like white male power structure that we've had, these people making the rules. What I really, really, really hope will happen, and really doubt, is that the Citizens United case will be overturned, because I can't donate $5 million to Bernie Sanders' campaign. I'd love to, but I can't. So why is, Coca-Cola or Delta or whoever, why do they get that kind of privilege? Like, it's not fair. It's, it's rigged. It's not the people's interest.
Yeah, like the NRA and
right.
the pharmaceutical companies
exactly.
and all of that kind of stuff.
They get this like vested interest in the government, and it seems so wrong. And what I hope to see is lawmakers making laws, not companies making laws and then scooting them over and saying, just put your signature on that, and we'll definitely, donate to your next campaign. That's what blows me away. Like, didn't you run for this position because you wanted to write laws to like make things better for your people where you live and the people who elected you, the people who trusted you? Like, why were you doing this if not for all of those reasons? And maybe the pay is nice, pension's nice, I don't know, good retirement. I mean, that's all anybody wants to talk about is a retirement package, and like, I should care more, but I'm 24. I want to pay my bills right now. Like, 40 years from now, the earth might not even be here, so let's not talk about retirement. Let's just talk about, like, stopping climate change. But that's what I hope. And I'm not even going to say I hope that someone else wins in 2020, because I don't have a lot of hope for that. Unless a bunch of people get a lot of critical thinking skills within the next year, I don't have a lot of hope that that he will be outvoted. But I would rather have him than the vice president be president, because he scares the bejesus out of me. That is a scary man, because he has connections and he has political experience and he can get things done. And he did get things done in Indiana, and a lot of women have been worse off for that. He kind of gutted Planned Parenthood, and I just, anytime someone says, impeach Trump, I say, oh God, no. No. Please, like, he's incompetent enough that things are not really progressing as they would if we had this little sneaky weasel in that office, because Pence is a scary man.
So I only have 2 more questions for you. The first is, if someone was thinking about attending March in the future, what would your advice be to them?
I would say to go, but to remember your privilege, to remember that there are people who have to work, people who can't afford transportation, people whose lives would be upended if their family saw them tagged in a photo on Facebook that they had attended a women's march. There are people who can't take that risk. So the fact that you can is so important to remember. Remember that you're privileged in that way, and that you can, you know, maybe say something for the people who couldn't be there. And I would also recommend, like, that you definitely use the bathroom before you go. I think I went in the MARTA station, and I was very grateful for that, because by the time we were leaving, I was like, I have got to pee, we need to go now. And oh gosh, my advice would be, like, to put your sign on, like, a stick or something, because I just had mine as, like, a piece of paper, and it was very difficult to hold, and my hands were sore after trying to hold it, like, not in front of my face, but out, and so people could read it. And then, like, a double-sided sign is really nice, because people can read it from both sides. So a little bit logistical, a little bit theoretical. But.
And my last question is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to share?
Well, yeah, I'll just share this brief story of why I think this work is very important, and why it matters. I mentor 7th graders in creative writing, and we were writing a story one day, and as a group activity we were creating a character, and I said, okay, this mail carrier comes up on your porch and delivers mail, like, let's create this character. How can we personify, how do we make them a character? And they're talking about, oh, how do they walk, how do they talk, and we come across the part where I say, okay, how do they look? And a couple people said, well, she probably has this kind of hair, da-da-da. And one girl said, haven't you seen TV? Don't you know? They're always men. It's always a male man. That's what it's called. It's a mailman. And I thought, oh, this was not my lesson plan. So I briefly just have to kind of, because I was being observed, so of course I thought, why is this coming up when I have, like, someone observing me?
It's a plant.
Right, it's a plant. So I said, well, actually, I think it's important that we remember TV is not true to life. My male person is a woman, and a couple other girls said, yeah, me too. And I said, policemen, firefighters, all of those jobs, fireman, policeman, mailman, that is, it's not true. That's the word we have, but that's not accurate, Women can do those things. Women do those things. It's not just possible, it is happening. And it was such a brief interaction. I hope I got through to her, but it reminded me of a similar instance a couple years ago in a summer camp in a 3rd grade classroom where they were talking about what they wanted to be when they grew up. And a little girl said something about the president, and a little boy next to her said, "Don't you know only men can be the president?" In the 3rd grade. And I just squatted down next to them in their little tiny little chairs, and I said, "Well, that's true so far. We've only had men so far, but there's no rule that says women can't be the president, and other countries have women presidents." And he's like, "Really? Huh." It just never occurred to him that it was possible, and the little girl was like, okay, good, I don't have to erase what I put on my paper. But that is still, those are still our school children right now, and we have the chance to say, that's not right. That is an inaccurate assumption. So, you can't obviously bring every 3rd grader to the Women's March, but that kind of, camaraderie, I think, is important in keeping all of us who are doing that kind of groundwork. It's important in keeping us inspired and keeping us going and keeping us remembering that there are other people out there who are doing this work and who are just as exhausted, but they're there and we have support.
That's a great way to end. I want to thank you for doing this. That was a really wonderful interview.
Good.
So, thank you.
Thank you for coming.